This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. Respectonomics is bringing you Living Economics. This is a bi-weekly production, and its purpose is to bring you some sort of practical insights into the economics of the day. They could be domestic in the sense of Canadian, but they can also be international. Today, we are going to be looking at an international corridor, the Straits of Hormuz, really, if you want to call that a corridor. This rollout, though, is practical, straightforward, and actionable. And what we're going to be talking about here, and the name of this Living Economics presentation is called Casualties of the Gas Price Wars. Now, generally speaking, when you hear of a gas price war, it's on the main street in your community, and there are 3 or 4 gas stations, and each one is looking over his or her shoulder at the other station and seeing if they can bring the price down a little bit. And you get into this gas price war. And it goes from, let's say, $2.20 down to 2.19, 2.18, 2.17. It sounds like an auction in reverse. The gas price war we're talking about, however, is far more cynical, far more critical, and it's the gas price war that is resulting from the altercation between the United States and Iran and the way in which the Straits of Hormuz have been effectively blocked. I've mentioned this before, that the devil's way of teaching us geography is to present a war. I would say half the population probably didn't even know that there was a place called the Straits of Hormuz, and were unaware of its navigational capabilities and so on. So, with all of this in mind, I'm going to take you to a place of looking at this gas price war and its significance. My name is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I am your voice of Respectonomics. And what we're going to be looking at now is, first of all, let's just look at the gas prices. Everybody knows at the pump that the prices have gone up significantly, and it would be pretty much a sort of case of being blind not to recognize that these prices, these gas prices, both in terms of gas and in terms of diesel, are going to be supporting higher price levels across the entire system, throughout the economy, in other words. So it's reasonable to say that the gas price, these higher gas prices, are going to be inflationary. One of the things that comes out of that is that the inflation rate is often shown as a sort of decimal point exercise. You hear numbers like 0.9%, and it almost gives you a feeling of, oh, well, that's not too bad. Well, 0.9% multiplied by 12 is closing on 12 nines are, what is that, 76? Yes, 12 nines. That is a very, very large increase on an annualized basis. 12 nines, excuse me. 12 nines is 108. What am I saying? 10.8%. So the point I'm getting to is this, that a lot of the real inflation that we encounter is a direct proxy on our ability to afford goods and services, not to mention our level of confidence, our consumer confidence, as it's called. And as a result of this, the gas prices are more inflationary than the so-called government number would suggest. And also, one has to come to a sort of realization that the government wouldn't really want you to be looking at the real rate of inflation, because that would probably bring consumer confidence down even more. We need to be, though, intellectually honest in the sense of what we as consumers confront. Our prices are rising across the board, whether it's a gas price, whether it's the price of insurance, whether it's the price of housing. whether it's the price of a plumber coming to fix your leaking water faucet. All of these things add to the same point. Our real costs are going up more than our incomes. So it's, in a sense, we are reducing our standard of living. Now, that all said, I now want to turn to another point, which is I mentioned that the title is The Casualties of the Gas Price War. We've talked about the gas prices and their significance. Now we're going to talk about what's called producer goods. Producer goods are the ones that are in the pipeline that are used in manufacturing and building and construction. And these are the ones that ultimately bring us our consumer goods. But you often don't see these things. You might say that something's made of aluminum, but you don't particularly get into where did the aluminum come from. Well, 8% of the world's aluminum goes through the Straits of Hormuz. So what we're looking at here, and that's just one example, what we're looking at here isn't necessarily the price of aluminum as much as looking at the supply of aluminum. We can look at sulfuric acid, ammonia, and urea. They're all used as fertilizers. And again, they're not things that you particularly think about. You might not even think about fertilizer unless you go to your garden center in the spring. But the fact of the matter is, these are essential ingredients to fertilizer. Fertilizer is what is added to make crops grow more plentifully. And here's the difficulty. If the supply chain of these ingredients, these producer goods, is restricted, then presumably there won't be as much fertilizer to go around, regardless of price. We're talking supply chain here, regardless of price, which means that a farmer will be challenged with whether they will add more fertilizer in the same way as they did in the past, and if not, the yields will be lower. Now, in the rich Western world, that may sound like an inconvenience. It might say, well, it will translate into the higher price of bread, for example. But in other jurisdictions that have lived with what you might call hand-to-mouth poverty, this kind of lack of fertilizer or lack of supply of fertilizer could lead to crops literally not being available. So what these producer goods restrictions mean isn't just in terms of us, in terms of price or inconvenience. It's also a social dynamic of understanding what it can mean elsewhere in the world. Even in our own world, we can look at helium, for example. It's used in semiconductors and MRIs. Can you imagine going into your favorite hospital to have an MRI only to be told that we don't have enough helium to operate, therefore no MRIs this week? And we start thinking about how important those kinds of technologies are. Think of sulfur. Most people hardly think of sulfur. It was something we used to play around with it in our high school chemistry lessons. But the fact is, sulfur is used in refining. It's used in refining copper, nickel, zinc. And if you've got, therefore, a shortage of sulfur, again, that comes through the Straits of Hormuz, if you've got a shortage of sulfur, then that's going to have a direct influence on copper and nickel and zinc, all of which are used in the manufacturing of cars and trucks, your wiring in your house. There are a tremendous number of applications which are sort of hidden from view because they're not really consumer goods, they are called producer goods. And then the other one is in the area of plastics. Now, most of us have this idea that we want to reduce our dependence on plastic, which is all very well when you go to the grocery store. I think we can get our heads around that. What is less tangible, less where we in fact become even more demanding, is, for example, an IV bag. If you are having an IV, what's it called? When you're getting an IV, getting intravenous medication, the IV bag is what actually holds it together, it holds the fluids. So therefore, to say, well, I don't like plastic, well, maybe we don't like IV bags either. So what I'm getting at is we're looking at supply shortages that are probably going to take time to rebuild, regardless of no forecast on the Straits of Hormuz, but rather to say we're dealing with a supply chain that has been disrupted and it's bringing it back to the normal, manageable, reliable, consistent levels. Who knows when? So I think we need to look at the casualties of this gas price war, not only in the narrower sense of gas prices at the pump, but also to understand what it means down the road in terms of being able to get whether it's fertilizer or food or whether it's getting a semiconductor put inside your microwave, whatever it might be. Now, I just want to go one more step on this. We live in a world of plenty. And the world of plenty, and this is a social comment, the world of plenty means that we do tend to think of more and more. The definition of more and more is found in one's basement. We have more and more things stacked and packaged away that probably haven't seen the light of day for a long time. If you look at the standard garage, you'll see that it's stacked with stuff and not with a car. This more and more is something that we sort of culturally we sort of go after. I think most of us, independently and individually, really wish there was a case for just a little bit less to worry about, less to think about, less to clutter us with. And if we go into that approach for a moment, we may consider these casualties of the gas price war, as we've described it, we may think of these as an opportunity to scale back. And an opportunity to scale back may be socially appealing. It may give people more time to be reflective, more time for people to, I was going to say, study their navels, but really seriously have time to be able to be still and to get to know yourself a little better. Which also then leads to probably a question of could this be a recession? And while most of us think of recessions as something to avoid, we should look at a recession as something also that says we are receding, because that's what a recession is. The economy is receding. If it is receding, what if the portrait, the picture, is in fact one of receding from the edge of the cliff? Because if the cliff is where we are at, a recession would be a very fine place to be to pull us back from the brink so we can consolidate, rationalize, rethink our goals and our preferences, lifestyles, and so on. So the gas price war is dangerous, it's unpleasant, it's upsetting, it's inflationary, and it can lead to these supply shortages. Is there a silver lining? Is there a green light on the other side of all this? And the answer is yeah, there probably is. But we need to accommodate the cultural benefit rather than thinking of the systemic idea that we're always going to go on prospering, we're always going to go on getting more, we're always going to say, I need to expand. The idea of, as it were, standing still or contracting even may have some social benefits. They're worth considering. This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley, your voice of Respectonomics, and I rest my case. Having said that, I also welcome any comments and ideas you may have. This is intended to be an interchange of ideas, not a one-way street. So do feel free to contact us at jeremy@respectonomics.com. Jeremy@respectonomics.com. Thank you.